So thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight. We have a great panel. We're really excited. If you have not yet heard about Founder Real Talk, our podcast, we'd love for you to follow. This is our first panel-based podcast. So as the conversation is going tonight, please think about questions that you might like to ask. And it'll be part of the podcast too. So thanks for being here. And without further ado, let me invite up Alex, who is moderating our panel. Alex is a former Chief Product Officer and a Wisdom Partners coach. So we thought it'd be great to have him moderate the panel. And somebody asked me this, I should remember, what is the company you helped found?
So the company I helped found was kind of in a community building space during COVID, and we were able to pivot around and exited in just about 2 years. So it was a quick little project, and it taught me so much about exploring problem spaces and things like that. And since then, I've just been advising founders full time. There's some founders here that I advise right there, and I love it. I love helping people out with their problems and figuring out how to kind of take their vague idea for a solution and then really figure out what the market really wants with it.
And I remembered all of that, but I could not remember the name. What's the name of it?
The name was called Aonic Labs. The product was called Weaver, but then it got kind of eaten up by a private equity conglomerate, and you're never going to hear about it ever again. But
all right,
they have
that's why I don't remember the name.
Exactly, it's a secret now.
Okay, all right, over to you.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks again, Gary, for sponsoring. Big thanks to Entrepreneurs First for hosting. I love this space. I've been in here for events a bunch of times. I feel really lucky to be able to host here too. It's just, I think you can kind of feel the creative energy. They have such great founders here, and a lot of them are at this same place on their journey of trying to find product market fit. Is anyone in the audience from Entrepreneurs First or an EF company? No? Oh, there you go. Welcome. Thanks for having us. We appreciate it. And before we get the panel up here, I just want to talk really quickly about product market fit. It's kind of been a product market fit week for Josh and I. We taught a workshop on Tuesday about PMF and about leadership with about 20 founders from Kyrgyzstan, which was a very interesting group to meet. And a lot of what we ended up talking about, and I won't go too far into lecture mode, was that product market fit, you can break into a lot of metrics, but it's really just about two main things. Is this problem that you've identified in the market real, and is it painful enough that people want to pay for it? And then is the solution you're building what really solves that need? So a lot of ways to break down product market fit, but those two things are the main thing. Is the problem real, and is your solution a good answer to the problem? So hopefully some of that stuff will come up organically with our panel today. And without further ado, I'd like to invite all four of you to come on up. We can do some intros live when you get up here, but come grab some seats. Awesome. And I wanted to start with you, Daniel. You are kind of the most seasoned investor we have on the panel, so I think you bring a really broad perspective of a lot of companies, where some of us have only been involved in one or two companies. So tell us a little bit about Wealthing. You have a VC fund and a VC club. And then could you tell us a bit about when you're evaluating a business from an investor perspective, what type of things stand out to you as a positive signal that a company's found product market fit?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. There's a few things. So we analyzed 59 variables in any deal. So there's quite a few. But some of the things that initially stand out is basically the team and their capacity to not only execute, but their capacity to achieve greatness in the face of adversity. Especially with COVID, with all these wrenches thrown into the system. What is their capacity to keep going and to pivot if needed and to keep going and succeed? So that will be the main one.
Okay. And is there anything that you think has kind of shifted over the years? Obviously, we're in a bit of an AI boom right now, and COVID was also a very disruptive time to a lot of startups. Is there anything in all the years of investing that kind of 10 years ago versus today, what's different? And what type of things do you look for that are different?
Well, everything is different. I think, so in the past 6 years, I've looked at about 2,000 companies. We've only invested in 53, and we only have 43 live right now. We had about 5 exits last year. But so much has changed from any crisis in the world to our investment thesis. I mean, we're really focused 6 years ago in biotech, and all of a sudden with the rise of AI, we started investing more and focusing more in cybersecurity and in other industries like fintech. And again, it's being able to adapt to the new markets.
Okay, great, thanks. And then Greg, I wanted to give you kind of a soft sponsor shout out because Greg is the CEO of Branch, which makes office furniture, and I actually use his furniture in my home office. So I thought it was funny you ended up on this panel. When Adam introduced me to you, I was like, Branch, the chair I'm sitting in right now at home?
Did Adam tell you he was the second employee at Branch in 2019?
No, I didn't know that.
He's
Wow.
an OG.
Thank you to you too, Adam, for my home office furniture. Greg, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about Branch and kind of the story behind it and really what drove you to create it. And I think you're in an interesting spot because you're basically a hardware business. And there's so many of these software companies that are just vibe coding things and shipping them and trying to make up for their mistakes as they go along. But you can't do that with what you did. You had to actually create a real strategy and think it through in advance.
That's so nice of you to refer to us as a hardware company and make me sound a little more techie. We're a very traditional legacy business with, I would say, like a tech wrapper on it. Okay, so the Branch story is office furniture is this like super niche kind of space. I had no background in office furniture. No one has a background in office furniture. Nobody's interested in office furniture. But my background was in commercial real estate. And through my experience in commercial real estate, I saw that there was this industry, this kind of adjacent industry that was causing a lot of headaches for groups that I was witnessing. And so I got interested in office furniture and I started to do research on it and I started to talk to anyone in the industry who would talk to me. And it became very clear to me that it was completely antiquated and very legacy and run by these 100-year-old firms. And it was expensive and it was slow and the NPS score for the industry was 0 and. It was just like everything was wrong with this industry. And it was like, okay, we need to start a business in this space. So the story is effectively that I recruited 2 co-founders. They're still my co-founders today. We've built the business together. This is 6 years ago now. And in New York City, we started building this direct-to-enterprise style office furniture company built on kind of fixing the issues with the industry that I just talked about. And then, of course, COVID hit. I'm sure that there will be a question about this to come, so you can imagine that was quite interesting, running an office furniture business. Long story short, today we are both a B2B focused and direct-to-consumer focused office furniture company. And for the past 5 years or so, we've been the fastest growing office furniture company in North America. So that's our story.
And I helped, don't forget. I bought it. Cool, well thanks. Chelsie, I think you're kind of our main founder on the panel today. I think some of us are former founders. I think you're the most like in the weeds day-to-day of current AI problems. And
it's a slog, guys.
Exactly. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're building at ViralMoment? And when I was looking into what you're working on, I think it's interesting because there's so many different ways to use the technology you're building. And this is a big problem with product market fit today. So could you tell us a bit about how did you really identify a specific problem space? And what was that customer discovery process like to figure out what to actually build and focus on?
Yeah. What I'm doing is because I was really obsessed with a problem, and that's why I'm here today. Back in 2018, I had a weird job. I was working for the Department of Defense, helping them with figuring out what people say online. So they would come to me and they would, like, the FBI would be like, we need to know what people in Afghanistan think about the price of bread. And my job would be like, cool, I'm not going to do that, but I'll go find some technologies that you guys could use to help. So I basically funneled technology to solve weird problems. And at that time, I was like, 2018, I don't know, the world felt a little weird. A lot of political stuff was going down. I was watching my mother. I love my mother. We're very close. She was like in these YouTube rabbit holes of like Hillary Clinton is a lizard person, and this is like so there was just so much happening in my world that was driven by what was happening online. And I was like, what happens online matters. It changes our beliefs, our behaviors, our purchasing decisions, but there's no way to see it or understand it at scale. It's just this weird black hole. And I cared so deeply about disinformation, kind of because of my mother and just people in my life. I was like, we gotta we got to at least know what's out there. And like nothing could do it. And there were a couple companies that did text-based social listening, was like the industry that kind of is like a weird, crappy legacy industry that does this stuff. I was like, this is not working, and we got to know what's happening out there, and we got to know what's happening in video. So we created a video intelligence technology that can read hundreds of millions of videos every day at scale to actually start to get a grip on like, what the hell's happening on the internet.
Interesting. This is kind of a common path I hear with a lot of founders, which is they saw a problem and it was important to them, but then you actually have to figure out how to make a venture scale business out of it. Because what I'm hearing is this was a personal problem to you, but then you had to figure out, okay, well, how do I actually make lots of money with this? So what did that journey look like for you?
Man, it's still on it, like you said, in the weeds today. And yeah, I think it's been actually really hard because the problem I'm passionate about and like what drives me, it's information on the internet and disinformation and how we like form our culture and society around like the content that's out there. I was like, well, how am I going to monetize this? And frankly, I haven't quite accomplished that. So, I mean, I make money. ViralMoment sells social intelligence work to big companies. I have clients like Warner Brothers, Mattel, Coca-Cola, and I tell these companies this is what's happening online, and this is what people are saying about you, and here's the people who are boycotting you today or whatever. So it's absolutely like a very important company, but it still doesn't quite like scratch the itch of why I started the business and do like the tech could do that, but people won't pay me to do that. So maybe someday I'll get some extra time and go in my basement and save the world. But.
Yeah, it can be a tough balance doing something you care about and that also makes money too. Well, I hope the journey keeps going well. And then on to Nathan. I want to introduce you as well. Nathan, I know you're an exited founder. That's actually how we know each other, is from an exited founders social group. And could you tell us a little bit about what some of your past startups were, what you're doing now with Basal Capital? And I think you're a really interesting person to talk to right now, especially because there's this kind of AI bubble going on. And in my opinion, there's definitely a ton of real value, but there's also a lot of hype, and I think there's going to be a contraction at some point. So your big exit was in the crypto space. So I'd love to hear your perspective on when you're building in a really hype-driven time like this, how do you keep focused on the signal for what do people really want versus what's just buying into the hype?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I was kind of still thinking about your comments. I was like, did your social video platform figure out if Hillary's a lizard or not? Like, you got a lot of video data.
I can tell you what people are saying about it.
Oh, okay. All right. Just had to land that joke before I got into my story. Yeah, so 2 questions. Startups I've done 3 startups. My first one was a game-based learning startup. We were focused on how to help founders learn skills together about how to work as a team, as a lot of teams have problems with co-founder conflict and companies can fail because of that. My later 2 startups were both in the blockchain space. One was one of the largest NFT collections of 2021, did about $500 million of secondary market volume. And then I launched another business right after that, right into the crypto bear market, which died very quickly, and I don't want to talk about.
It's okay. We can just focus on the one that went really well.
Yeah.
So since like crypto and NFTs especially were such a very hot and sort of short-lived hype cycle, how did you make sure you were building something that was really attractive and people wanted? Because you exited, so it clearly went well, but it can be tough to not just build something for the sake of it and know people actually want it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also ties back to what Chelsie was saying earlier, too, of like, there's sometimes things that you are just really passionate about, but sometimes it's not what the world's really, really thinking about and talking about and want. And what's really lovely about, kind of listening and getting involved in the community, which is how my really successful startup started. We were really actively doing the things that our product was about, buying and selling at these NFTs. We were really deep in this space. We were on Twitter Spaces every single day, leading them sometimes talking to people and asking questions. So we were really tuned in to what people wanted. And that really helped us sort of get the timing just right. We knew a couple things that hadn't been tried before that after we launched, everyone else was copying us and doing. We had a lot of really deep authenticity where everyone wanted to see us win. We weren't coming from the outside and trying to make something happen in a space that we weren't part of. And so those were things I think really helped. And when you're kind of trying to filter out like noise in a bubble versus what's real, I think getting inside of that bubble really helps. I can't think of like other other bubbles, but certainly like in the crypto bubble, there was a lot of things that were just like celebrities coming in trying to shill something. And so the fact that we had been doing this for a long time before it was a big deal, that was what was really exciting to people was, I saw you guys back when there was only 10 people in this space. I saw you guys when there's 100 people. I saw you guys when there's 1,000 people. And so that was kind of how we were able to really time the market right. But I will say, timing is really important too, aside from the hype side. One of the things I've found from the 3 startups is the one that did the best was the one that was just like right at the perfect time. I couldn't control that. That was just luck.
Yeah, I think timing is a really good thing to highlight. Even my startup I worked on was, as I said, in a community building space. COVID was the perfect time to do that. If we did that 2 years later, I don't think anyone would have cared or funded it or bought it or anything like that. So I think timing's critical. And even like you were saying, Greg, about finding the right positioning, and I'm sure COVID kind of helped you guys too. All those home offices needed furniture and they didn't want to spend $2,000 on it. So like identifying that market and I think living your problem is a big part of it. You can't just build for yourself by any means, but you're going to kind of get the deepest understanding of it where some college grad going into YC might not have that same nuance. Into some kind of general discussion questions. I think the concept of pivoting and course corrections is really famous in the startup world. I know we pivoted like 10 times, and it's exhausting when you're the head of product and have to keep making new ones. But I wanted to hear from you guys a bit about some of your stories about course corrections you made, either on the product itself, or how you marketed it, or who you focused on, and kind of how that led to positive improvements in your business, or potentially portfolio companies that you work with too.
I'll go first. So like I said, I started out being obsessed with disinformation just as a problem space, but then pretty quickly I was like, I need to figure out who would pay for this and where to go. We did a thing where we interviewed 100 people and asked them what they needed, and that was like one of the best things I've ever done because we would interview about 10 people, make a product, and then show it to the next 10 people and get their feedback. And during that, just the amount of learning, and it wasn't just learning about the product. I actually didn't learn almost garbage about the product, but understanding really deeply after that the users, like who will pay for this? Where is a problem? Where are their budgets? Like that informed the next 3 years of my building, and it's like still the track I'm on today. So, I mean, there's been changes, but just after you get locked in on the problem space, figuring out how can I now get really locked in and obsessed with the user, that's the next lever you need to have.
Okay. Yeah, we had a big pivot. Like in the early days, you have like a million little pivots, but we had a big pivot force on us. I kind of alluded to the COVID thing earlier. So we were a year into the business. We had just expanded across the US and expanded into the Canadian market for our B2B business. It was going really well, seemed to be going really well. And then COVID hit, and we went from a deep 7-figure pipeline to, I think, like a $25,000 pipeline over the course of 5 days. Every single corporate client that we were working with was like, hit the brakes, we're not signing our lease, we don't know what's happening. And we had raised some money at that point. I think we'd raised about $2 million, and there was like friends and family money in it and stuff. And it was like, do we just return this capital? What do we... And we were like, you know what, we're going to try to make this work. None of us had any experience in the consumer side of things. And we were like, seems like people might be staying home for a little bit longer. Maybe we should like try to sell to those people. We don't really know how to do that. Also, like our products were packaged and meant to be shipped and assembled in like transport trucks, like entire offices at a time, not in like UPS single packages. We didn't know if we'd need to like assemble chairs and desks for people in their homes or if they would do it themselves. There were like all these questions that we had to figure out. And so we like spent 6 weeks. We probably worked, I don't know, Adam would remember, we probably worked 90 to 100 hours a week, like for 6 weeks straight. It was really crazy not knowing if this was going to work or if we were just going to run out of money. And then we turned on the direct-to-consumer site, and right away we sold 0 products. And then within a week, maybe we had done like $1,000 in revenue. And we had this guy on our team. He was this like young guy. He was like right out of school. It was his first job. And he was like, what if we just like, we think our products are really good. What if we just like start shipping them out to like furniture reviewers? And I was like, I don't even think we like have money to do that. And he was like, let's do it. I was like, okay, whatever, ship out some like chairs to some furniture reviewers. And then one day we like wake up and we've done like $30,000 in revenue. We're like, what happened? And some random blogger had like written about our chair. And then like the next day we did 40,000, then 50,000. And it just went like hockey stick from there. Okay, so that's early 2020. Fast forward to today. Now we're in the process of pivoting back toward the B2B business. That's what we originally wanted to build. It is the bigger part of the market. It's higher margin, it's higher repeat rate. It's all of these metrics that you want are in the B2B market. But now it's a battleship. It was this super quick pivot in early 2020, and now it's like very slowly shifting the organization to reorient itself toward the actual opportunity in the market. So we are actually weirdly like mid-pivot again.
That's a good story. I have. It was really well said. I have so many examples, but I'll just give one example of a company that, unfortunately, the ending is that they failed. But this company it was probably maybe the third company that came to to pitch to us, and we had been following them for about 2 years before they came, and they had a robot assistant for hotels. They were doing amazing. I mean, the last 12 months, they had done maybe $3 million in revenue. And all of a sudden, COVID hit, and nobody was using hotels anymore. So they came to us, and we're very active investors. So we want to help our companies succeed, and we're always there for having a 30-minute conversation and just talking about, well, what other things can we do? And they came to us and they were like, well, we have this idea. And they started, so they pivoted to hospitals, because all the hospitals were doing all this testing and they had to have space between people. So they started doing that. The problem was that it was a really good idea and it worked out for some time, but afterwards they started realizing that the hospitals were very busy and the robots were a bit short. So a lot of people were running into the robots. And the hospitals ended up canceling that. And long story short, they failed. But it was a good try. It was one of those moments that, okay, what can we do with this? We have everything set up. And they found a completely new market that they weren't thinking of doing. And theoretically speaking, it could have worked. But in reality, there's other things that happen.
I was just thinking a little bit about what other people said. And one thing I was really reflecting on was sometimes the pivots can be in the same space that you're in, and other times they can be pretty far from what you were doing. And I've seen the former work better and the latter work a little less well. So I liked your story as kind of being like in the same space. We're pivoting from B2B to B2C and back to B2B, but we're kind of keeping a lot of stuff the same. A story I have like that is I now run a VC fund. I was thinking about starting a fourth company. I spent a week with these entrepreneurs who are amazing. I angel invested in 2 of them who I thought were some of the best in the batch. I hated the pitch they gave me. They were telling me about the stuff that I knew wasn't going to be a big deal in the future, but they had the right area they're going after inside of AI. And so I still angel invested them. I think early stage team is everything. So I was like, whatever, you'll figure this out. They just finished last fall as one of the hottest YC companies, and they pivoted from this kind of area that like a lot of people I know about were talking is not so important into something adjacent that was really hot at that time, and in the memory and context space in AI. And so I think that's kind of like a really interesting lesson of like, if you're in the ballpark of something really exciting, you can kind of always find where there's more energy and more pain. And you can still build on everything you've done before. I think they went from their first pitch was something like RAG, which is sort of more on like the feature level and not quite as deep, into something that now like I personally have experienced problems with context and memory, and like I know lots of other people and teams and companies have too.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point about the founders themselves. I know when a lot of investors and accelerators are evaluating, especially very early stage companies, a lot of what you're looking at is the founder, because you know there's going to be hurdles. You know their first idea is not the thing that's going to make them $1 billion, or things like COVID happens. Like that's disrupted pretty much all of our businesses at some point, and there's a little bit of a survivorship bias, except your robotics company portfolio, that.
Oh, we didn't invest in it. So
Okay, perfect.
No, I really think it's gonna. Yeah, it's. Oh, thank you. Just my 2 cents on that. Yeah, when they came to pitch, they had just pivoted. So we saw the new business model, and we were risk adverse. And it was a good decision. We didn't lose the money.
Yeah, and I think that making that call on when's the right time to pivot, how big to pivot, what to do, it's very tough. Like it's very hard. Startups have a lot of issues, and that balance of staying the course and not being stubborn is super delicate. So I'm kind of curious. You guys told some great stories about when you had pivots, but how did that decision-making process look? Like Greg, you were talking. I'm sure it wasn't a casual choice. Like, hey, let's just do consumer, no problem. How do you kind of make those calls and decide either let's stay the course, let's give it a couple months, see how this pans out, or it's time to do something other than the bank account has no dollars left in it?
Yeah, I would say that was a weirdly personal decision. Well, and not just personal to me, but like personal to our team too. That was a little bit like, we don't know if we can make this work, but there's not that much money left in the bank account. We've got a lot of inventory. My parents, who are very like middle class people, have like invested some of their money into this. I can't really lose that. We've got all these like young people on the team. A lot of them, it's like their first or second job, or we're just gonna like let them go into this environment. What am I gonna do? I don't have any other ideas. This was my idea. This is the one. So like, it was just in that situation, it was just like, we have to figure this out. And so then you just do. And to the point about like investing in the founders, I remember like when we were raising our pre-seed, we started pitching these angel investors. We got like 5 minutes in, and the one guy's like, "Just stop. I don't know about furniture. I don't care about furniture. You people seem really smart and hardworking. I'm going to write you the check, but you have to promise me that if furniture seems like a stupid idea, the three of you will pivot to something else." And we're like, "Okay, yeah, give us the check, sure, whatever." But then like that thing actually happened in the real world. A really hard thing happened, and like we were just like, we have to figure this out, and we did. I don't know if I'm really answering your question. That was like a very unique situation that I hope I never have to face again in my professional life. But yeah, it was just like there was no choice. We just had to do it.
Yeah. I think a lot of them end up being just really unique situations, and it can be helpful to just kind of hear the broad perspectives and put little pieces of general learnings together.
And I'd say back to this like investing in the founders thing, it's so important because the world is changing so quickly. I would say like 2022, 2023, I felt real product market fit. I was getting meetings every day, like clients were seeking me out. I found this community of enterprise social listening people who like I kind of spread like wildfire through, and they were all telling each other about me, and everyone was coming, and it was awesome. It was the best feeling in the world. I just felt this pull, and we're like, cool, sell, let's go. But it wasn't too long after that like AI came out, and the way that buyers wanted to buy changed, and it's just everything I had with product market fit and felt actually like I don't think I changed fast enough. And the world started to change, and I was still kind of doing what had been working. So there is just this, like, I don't know, product market fit isn't this thing that you get or you find. It's like, hey, the world is changing, you're changing, technology is changing, your buyers are changing. How are you going to be someone that can build quickly, adapt, listen carefully, and like change into that at all times? So it's, I don't know, it's just this like constant morph that you do to be like, yeah, I'll be this today. Sure, okay.
Yeah, and then you can do crazy things like take your shoe business and get into enterprise AI data centers.
It's working for them.
Which made Allbirds make 6 times as much market cap as they had 2 days ago.
You go where the money is.
Life hack. Cool. Well, on the topic of founder mentality, I meet a lot of founders, especially early stage founders or first time founders, that kind of get this idea that once they have their product developed perfectly or have product market fit figured out, that this thing's just going to sell itself. Like if I build the greatest thing ever, it's going to go viral. I hear that you probably run into this a lot. People just say, it's just going to go viral. It's just that easy. That's our go-to-market strategy. And it never works that way at all. Like you still have to have some sense of a distribution strategy. So I'm curious how you guys think that a go-to-market strategy and a product market fit strategy kind of fit together and feed into one another and influence each other.
Someone else want to go first? Holding the mic, I'll go quickly, but what has worked so well for us and what I would recommend everyone in this room do as you build, find a community of people who all share a problem. That's where, like I said, that we started to spread. Like, whether it's a professional organization or a room full of people, or I don't know, I promise people who share this pain are talking about it somewhere, and finding that is so pivotal.
Yeah, I can try to answer. I think a couple of things. I think like in my industry, product market fit is not hard to find. Like this is not a new problem. Companies need office furniture for their people to work from. And we have seen, since we started this business, we have seen a lot of competitors and copycats show up. And at first, for the first probably like 3 years, every time we would see one, we'd be like, oh no. And then you start to see the pattern that 6 months later, their website is down, or you're not getting served Instagram ads anymore from that company. And I think the thing that we realized is like, it's not even just go to market, it's like execution, operational execution is really hard. And most people can't execute, or they can't get over the most painful parts of the early stages, which is the hardest part. And then I think like specifically with go to market for us, it was just about experimentation. It was like we didn't really like I had a couple of theses about like how we should be going to talk to the market and how we could get in front of businesses, and we were finding like most of that was just made up, and it was great in a pitch to VCs, but like in the real world, businesses weren't listening to me or to us. And then we just had this aha moment where we had tried like 10 different avenues. And then in our case, it was something as simple as like our first salesperson who we had hired, like went for a coffee with a commercial real estate broker. And the commercial real estate broker was like, oh, this is a real problem for me because my clients, when they sign a lease, they're like, where should I get my office furniture from? And he starts talking through all these pain points that are like the reason that I started the business. And we're like, bingo, this is the channel. So we should be talking to commercial real estate. And like, sure enough, we would spend $5 on a coffee and we would get a $50,000 lead. And so I think a lot of this is just experimentation. And look, like even today, like we're still experimenting. We're still like, I had a call yesterday with our GM of our B2B business, and like he pitched me like 3 new go-to-market channels that we haven't looked at yet. And we're 6 years into this thing. So it's just like constant iteration until you find the things that are working.
So those are both really good insights. From the investor point of view, in Spanish we have a saying, pan de hoy, hambre de mañana. It means that you eat today, but tomorrow you can go hungry. So as an investor, it's great to see that a company is doing revenue and doing well. But at the end of the day, we as investors don't get paid until there's an exit. So what we want to see is this: what's the capacity for the entrepreneur to be able to adapt and to always keep growing despite anything else?
Yeah, what else can I add? I think if you're thinking about go-to-market, it's so easy to get distracted, to have too many things you want to try and do to kind of stay at a high level. So I always think it's super important to go like way deeper into something like an ICP, ideal customer profile, than you think. Like, okay, 40-year-old men. Okay, what about those 40-year-old men? Like, how do you go another layer deeper, and then maybe like 2 or 3 levels deeper than that until you're talking about like shoe size and a certain color pants, and then you're like, whoa, there's actually a lot more people who do that than I realized. I thought if I went too niche, it'd just be like one person I'm talking about, but there's actually groups of really specific patterns that you only find when you go super deep into the details and then come back out and try and find that group again. So I do think that's like one area I see a lot of people when they're trying to think about like go to market, it kind of miss is like staying way too broad.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight, and it's something I see happen a lot, which is people have a very broad ICP, and then whatever person starts paying them the most money first, they just immediately start trying to find copycat customers, instead of, like you said, really drilling down into, okay, who does this make sense for? Why does it make sense for them? What'd you say, yellow pants? Like, why does yellow pants make sense? And
it was green, thank you.
Green pants. Like, why does that make sense? You kind of have to have a logic behind it, and I think that is how it feeds back into your product market fit strategy. Kind of piggybacking off that stuff, I'm curious how, kind of all of you alluded to this at some point, is that finding product market fit is not just a one-time thing. Like, you have to stay on top of your strategy and adapt it to market dynamics and what's happening. Can you tell us a bit about some of your experiences with not just finding some amount of product market fit, but keeping it and continuing to grow it, and not just kind of stagnating with what you have in hand today?
Sure. One company I'm advising right now, so they have kind of an early market that's like a good product market fit and easy to sell to, but isn't going to take them all the way into the large amount of revenue they're trying to get to. And so the early market's really nice in terms of having something that you can pay the bills, you can have a little bit of revenue for, and it allows them to be a lot more patient for the other parts of the product and the market fit to come together. So they know they want to go after enterprise customers. Those deals take a really long time. And they were kind of starting to lose faith, like maybe these guys aren't going to come to us, we need to build new features out. But because they had this revenue, they were able to actually kind of not get too antsy and wait for that group of people to start kind of showing up and having a lot of demand. And I was just talking to them last week, and they were telling me, man, we have way more inbound from this enterprise group than we can possibly handle. We actually have to like staff up for it now. And so I think that in terms of like product market fit, it's about finding something that you can eat today with, but still kind of focus on the bigger picture. And that's like one lesson I think that kind of takes it out of just like a binary, you have it or you don't have it, but something that gets you to like an early market that helps with something today while still helping you get in terms of the bigger business.
There definitely are, too, over time in a business, like levels of maturity and security that you start to reach. And not like that security will definitely last, but like we had a product line and it was the same kind of thing, had a smaller market, but we got it to a point where we're like, people love this, they're using this. And now we can kind of like let that ride while we build on top of it to create more product lines and go after different users within an organization or within an enterprise. So we really started out with like an insights leader, and then we were like, okay, those people are happy, we know we can sell to them, let's start to move into the marketing group and like the advertising group. So that's been a really kind of like delightful part of the growth of just being like, not like it's ever done, but like this is good. This exists, I can take a breath, this is profitable. Where is my next growth from? So it is, I don't know, there's the scary journey of always pivoting and moving, and you never stop that, but there are levels where you can kind of breathe, say, we've done this thing, now where's the growth going to come from next? And it's hard when you're VC backed because the next stage has to be really big, but it's a fun part of it too.
I think my answer probably parallels your anecdote, Nathan, where it's like, we have found product market fit across 3, arguably 4 different revenue channels. And that's happened over time. It's happened in phases. It's happened at different levels of scale for each of those 4 channels. But we have these constant moments where like one of the channels isn't working for whatever reason or not working how we've underwritten it. And we go like, thank God that we've got this channel diversification. And so to me, the important part of the answer here is like, we always think about this like counterfactual for ourselves where we only had like 1 or 2 revenue channels, and what would the business look like in that circumstance? And a lot of the time the answer is like, we would not be sleeping very well. And so to me, it's just like, yeah, finding that how can you find differentiation or diversification of revenue within your business? So finding product market fit across multiple channels.
So I have another story. We have a company that so their first product and what they thought they were going to exit with was this app or this algorithm they created that uses your mobile phone to detect fluid in the middle ear for toddlers, which is the biggest hurdle or challenge in detecting or ear infections, changing them to telemedicine. So they did that. It's actually quite useful and works very well. But they decided, well, if we did this one, we can do more. What else can we do that uses phone, and we just create an algorithm that works to answer different questions for parents. And what they decided is that they could just make a platform. So they're working now for neurological diseases, detecting or using the phone's camera to detect micro eye movements, things like that. So they're doing really well. They're in beta testing right now for that, and they're just going to grow that as a platform. So they're going to have more revenue streams still catering to parents.
Cool. I think that's really interesting to hear. Basically, all of you said something to the effect of like a wedge market or a beachhead market and establishing some degree of stability and then making sure to diversify out from there. I think a lot of founders feel pressured sometimes by their VCs even, like you said, about we got to get to this next round, so we got to 10x our ARR, and they're just trying to get straight to climbing Mount Everest. And sometimes it's good to just like get the bills paid so you're not just like starving to death, and you can focus on these growth areas. And something we were talking about before we all sat down up here was about the kind of the influence of AI in the product development process today. And I'm curious to hear some of your perspectives on how that shifted, because it's so much easier than ever to build stuff, but sometimes it's just stuff. Like it can be kind of undisciplined or maybe not quite as high quality as if you threw a full engineering team at it. So what are some of your perspectives on how AI has changed the process of finding product market fit and your ability to experiment with it?
All right, I'm going to try to freestyle this. I actually would not say, this might not be super surprising considering the type of business that I'm running, but we are building a lot of tools internally using AI. They're not necessarily focused on product market fit. They are in some cases focused on conversion, especially enterprise conversion. And so, an example would be like a tool that literally just like an AE on our sales team built in Claude Code, where he's analyzing inbounds that are coming to the BD team, and then it's ranking them in like one of 5 profile categories, and then the speed that the BD team gets to those inbounds is based on like how they're ranked. And so like, hopefully that has some positive effect on conversion on our highest priority inbounds. But yeah, I would say like it's still really early for us, and we're not really doing anything that's like notable on the product market fit side.
I would say like opposite. I mean, I'm in a very different industry. Guys, this is such a fun time. Holy cow. Like, I'm so energized right now by like getting back to the scrappy early bit. I like sometimes get mad at my company because I'm like, God, we had to fill all these customer contacts, and I just want to build new stuff. AI is amazing because I, who am not the technical developer on my team, can go sit in my basement for 2 hours and come out with 4 prototypes that work. Like, what? So being like a creative builder who's just obsessed with like solving some problems, what a time to be alive. There's this concept called prototyping, which like early days when I was starting, it's like prototyping, but even earlier. But when I first started my company, we like built a bunch of flyers, or you build the website landing page to see if people will click. It's like, what is the very earliest thing I can kind of put out in the world is almost like a flare to see like, are people interested in this? You can do 40 of those tonight if you guys want because of AI. So I don't know, you hit like a spot that I get excited about, but I'm so excited for everyone here that's finding market fit, because AI is your superpower. Like, go build 17 things and show them and go talk to 100 people, you'll find it. And you have more tools than ever to do it.
I'm really happy you said that. I think we looked at some of the questions before, and this question of like AI and product market fit brought up another question I've had personally, which is, I feel like when you're trying to learn something, it's, for me personally, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it's easy to like do a lot of stuff and only learn a tiny bit or nothing about a bunch of things. So I've always like coached and myself tried to practice like focus on learning one thing really well. But in this age of AI, like there's Gary Tan talking about like go boil the ocean, go do everything at once. So I kind of am curious, like in your case, how do you decide like when is doing 17 things, and I'm not saying it's bad, like I actually just have a really open question about it, like when is doing 17 things and trying to figure it out the right move versus when is focus something that you think about with these new tools?
I would say it's actually a huge question, and that's so important to clarify. One of the beautiful things about AI is you can make like micro versions of a prototype. So you still need to focus on, I am solving this problem. Like, I care about this, I care about these people, I'm solving for them. But now I can actually build 5 versions of what might solve it to go show users or to go talk to users about. So it's not just about like go build 50 things. It's like, I'm obsessed with making this person's life better. Now I can build 4 things and go talk to 6 people who have this problem and ask them. Like, design with your users now. Like, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't, and your assumptions are wrong. Go make something and show people and knock out those assumptions as quickly as possible. It is about learning, and like AI and the ability to like build and show is the ultimate learning tool.
Yeah, thank you. So when I think of AI, yes, there's the development, but I think of it as a tool used for therapeutics or diagnostics. And something that really bothers me is when people use, and I'll tell you another story later, but when they use a third-party data to train their AI. So here's the story. We have one of our companies, it has a diagnostic tool that detects prostate cancer. They have something like a 98% accuracy, and it's amazing. They own the largest deposit of prostate cancer images in the world. It's their data. So the accuracy is there. In the last 2 years, I've seen maybe 3 others that claim to be similar. But when I asked them, and there was one that just raised about 30 million from Europe, trying to play with the big boys here in the US. And when I asked the CEO, okay, well, where do you get the data from to train your AI that apparently is amazing? Oh, well, we use third-party, like we buy from third-party vendors. It's like, whoa, how is that data verified? I mean, what's the accuracy, really? Because at the end of the day, in diagnostics, you're putting people's life at risk. That's, for me, a bad investment. Yes, I can lose the money. I don't want to kill somebody. I don't want to misdiagnose them, and I don't want to be part of that. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful tool, but has a lot of uncertainty. And in certain applications, that can definitely be dangerous. I love what you two guys were saying about kind of the ability to just build your vision. I think that's such an interesting idea. Like at my startup, we had a co-founder trio, and I was on the product side, and I was doing so much just, okay, the CEO said this, engineers said they can't build this, and like 95% of my job was a translation layer between the technical and the non-technical. And I think it's such a cool concept, like you were saying, Chelsie, to just be able to say, this is my idea. Like, maybe it's not ready to go into production tomorrow, but I don't have to give a big requirements document to my engineers necessarily, and then they build it, and then I say, actually, that's not at all what I wanted. Sorry, I didn't describe it very well. But you can just kind of fiddle and be like, this is it. And it needs to work better and be scalable, but kind of this is my overall concept. And I think that's a really kind of cool time to be in. Is that kind of what you guys are experiencing?
Totally.
I do think that that's happening a lot. It makes me like think of this experience I've had at least once, maybe twice, where there's somebody who's building a startup and they have created a video of their product and it's all fake. It's like, oh my God, I'm so ready to use this thing. I've just gotten sold on like a minute and a half watching this video. Oh, but it's not ready. You were just like testing to see if people are interested. So it's like this really interesting thing where you can create the vision, but then you also have to like manage expectations of when someone's coming to you afterwards and what's ready versus not. So I think it's a really interesting time, and personally, I just have more questions than answers at this point. But I do have a question about like, how do you all think about managing expectations with AI tools now that you can kind of promise and visualize so much, but can't always build it all equally as fast?
I'll like be the first to say it, sitting here in the middle of Silicon Valley. We're in the game of bullshit to a degree. Like it's what we're doing. And I think product market fit, frankly, it's about leaning forward ahead of what does exist to say, is this the right thing? Will you buy this? Will you give me money for this? I have this prototype. I have this model. This is beta. Will you try it? And yeah, there's an integrity problem where you have to have integrity. You have to stand behind things. If you create it and people say they'll buy it, you have to figure out, how do I build it? And that's, to your point, the operational challenge is not a fun part of doing this whole thing. But just to the product market fit game, can I invent something that solves a problem and figure out what that is? Like, what is the solution to this problem? Like, that's where you can lean ahead of your skis to be like, is this it? Is this it? Is it? Oh, this is it. Cool. Now I got to go figure out how to build this and operationalize it and execute on it. That's where like skill and talent comes in. But finding product market fit can really just be about, okay, I have actually proven, demonstrated, gotten data, I made prototypes to show this is something people want to buy.
Yeah, I think the BS angle is good to call out. I think there's definitely more overhype than underhype. I was just talking with some other advisors at Berkeley Skydeck the other day about Anthropic made a lot of news about Mythos, their new model, being too dangerous to release. And I was joking with them that the company that said they made an AI that's too dangerous to release a week ago accidentally dumped the whole source code for one of their products on the internet. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I totally believe you've actually made the world's smartest coding agent. I feel like there's a bit of a snake oil salesman thing going on here. But it's really tough to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it's a bit, again, different in our world. Like AI for us it's supplemental to our team. It accelerates the work that they do, but it's not like foundational to the business. Yeah, I think in the future, in some ways, it will be. So yeah, I think it makes our team a lot better. We're actually seeing that it makes our team a lot better. And another interesting thing is like we're not to the point where there's like any danger of something going wrong internally, like no open claw allowed. But no, we're not at the point where there's like any danger of anything going wrong internally. But one thing that we're finding is we started doing this thing where we do our like Monday stand up with the whole company. Where each team presents what they're working on. And a few weeks ago, we said, okay, we want each team each week to tell us, like, what did you build? What workflows did you build with AI last week? What did you automate? What tools are you using? And the stuff that is coming out every week is like, honestly, like my jaw is on the floor half the time. Like people are just so good at figuring this stuff out. It's way more intuitive to people than I think I appreciated. And to someone's point earlier, I think it was to your point, Nathan, like it can't just be stuff that's like AI or automations for the sake of automations. These are people who are actually like building things that remove the rote, boring parts of their day and are allowing them now to like legitimately focus on more strategic work, more high value work. And so we're actually like seeing that benefit. It's so early, but we are actually starting to see that benefit in the business. And hopefully at some point it does become more foundational to what we do.
I was going to say that I'm in the business of smelling bullshit, so it's funny that you say that. But at the end of the day, I loved what you said. We do give our team 2-3 hours a week to just play around with the systems and see. I mean, the AI is so cool because automation, but also it just opens up your creativity. So we always tell them, okay, yeah, what did you come up with? And it's awesome the new ways of doing things that they found, or I mean everything from video to editing to we can do this if we program it this way. And it's just amazing for us, for our processes, but also, I mean, yeah, you see it industry-wide, so it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think on the flip side of the hype about AI, there's also a lot of kind of fear-mongering, right, about it's going to take everyone's jobs, things like that. But like you said, I like to think of it as kind of a creative amplifier, taking a lot of the drudgery out. That's the things it's best at, just lots of information, really boring, repetitive stuff, so you can focus on the more creative aspects of your business. We do have to start wrapping things up so we can get to some questions from our audience. But the thing I wanted to close with is I think everyone up here has either done very well or is doing very well and growing well, but I want to hear a little bit about some of the stumbles or the lessons learned along the way. So if you were going to leave these founders with just kind of one cautionary tale of something that you learned by going through it, what would it be?
There's so much. I would just say don't get complacent. Just because you're doing well today, it doesn't mean that you can just relax and things are going to work out eventually. You need to always be prepared or have a backup plan. So I never just have one plan, I have 5 plans. And at least that way you kind of know, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, maybe we can go this way, or at least you have other avenues. So just that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, I actually like really struggled with this when I saw this question ahead of time. Which I think probably says something good about the experience that I've had as a founder. I will just like start with like the positive side first, which is, and this is like the oldest advice and everyone's heard it, but like you have to pick the right co-founders. Like pick people who you are aligned with, who want the same outcomes with you, who have complementary skill sets, who you are comfortable getting married to because you're going to spend so much time with them. And when I think about like what I've been able to build with my 2 co-founders, some of the people I was interviewing to start this business with 6-7 years ago, when I like think about had I chosen them instead of, I'm like, we wouldn't be here. We just like, it wouldn't have happened. So that is like on the affirmative side. That's the most important thing. I would say like the one when I tried to think back to like what were the moments where I felt like sick to my stomach, and most of them had to do with fundraising, probably unsurprisingly. And so I think like a little piece of advice might just be like, it's not done until the money's in your bank account. And we experienced that a couple of times where like we were literally celebrating physically, cheering, and then something goes wrong. And so just don't get too ahead of yourself. And then a little piece of advice, do not read The Hard Thing About Hard Things when you're in the first year of starting your startup, because you already wake up every morning wanting to throw up, and then you're reading about Ben Horowitz wanting to throw up and throwing up, and it's just like, don't do it to yourself.
I think my pain is around fundraising too. We had clients. We'd signed Warner Brothers as a client before I raised my seed round, and so I was like, "We're good. Like, I'm making money. I have a good company." We were doing AI kind of like before AI was a thing. I talked to 160 VCs before I got my first yes, and like, I don't know if I was just bad at pitching or what was going on, but like I was very pregnant at the time. There was just it was so frustrating, and I cried so many times. I was so close to walking away. We would just, but the grit it takes and the ability to just be like, we're going to keep going. There's a lot of fish in the sea. Like, I don't know. Find your people, figure out who your clients are, figure out who your investors are, dig in, and everyone else, like, tell them to go take a hike and believe in yourself.
Can I just say one more on that note? The other thing that brought me back to was we were just like, you read these articles and like this team of founders with this idea for like bubblegum just raised $20 million in their seed round, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, so we'll just like go out and raise $10 million. Of course, we're smart, we've got a good idea, there's a market here. And then like just how quickly that reality hits you, that like the headlines are not reality in the real world for 99.9% of us, no matter how great we think our idea is. Like, I just wish that I knew that going into it, because the disappointment of the first like 2 months or month and a half of trying to raise a pre-seed was awful. So now I know for the next time.
I cried a lot.
Yeah, crying and throwing up, that's just part of the startup way, huh? All right, let's see. Stumbles that I think could be learning lessons. The one thing I do think about looking at the 3 startups I've done is I call it finding the river. But there's so many things in life where you have this like passion, or me, I'll speak personally, I have this passion, I think this thing needs to change. But there might not actually be a lot of energy right at that time in the world for that thing to happen. And those things can be really hard. There's a famous quote that like being early and being wrong can be kind of the same. And if you're doing a startup, because you run out of funding before you get to see the whole thing. So I'd just say really think about, where do I feel a pull from the world? Where do I feel a pull of energy instead of me trying to push it? Especially if you're doing your first company, you're setting yourself up for a lot easier and more successful road than the other. They both can work, but there's enough other hard things about starting a startup. Like all the tears and vomit.
I'm just gonna add one last comment to these guys' insights. There are good investors out there, and you shouldn't take money for the sake of money. So as you pick your founders carefully, you should also pick your investors carefully.
Yeah, and I love what you guys are saying about just kind of, I think we need to talk more about how hard the journey can be emotionally. Like when Josh and I do founder coaching through Wisdom Partners, half of it ends up becoming founder therapy. Like they think they're coming in for just full tactical discussions, and then they're just like, I'm crying every day. This is awful. And I think it's a good lesson for founders that sometimes when you see these things on LinkedIn of people just being like, everything's great, I'm making all this money, there's like 99% of people who aren't having a great time in that moment potentially, and that there's a huge Instagram effect type of experience on LinkedIn. So it can be tough, and definitely lean on other founders, important people in your life. Don't get too stressed out that like, oh, it's not going well for me, but it seems to be going well for everyone else. It's probably not going well for most other people. So I think that's a great lesson.